I'm on the Border Management Subcommittee. I'm the ranking member there, so I'm down at the border quite a bit. So I do regular check-ins in different places, and you can't just go to one place even. The kind of the running joke there is if you go to one place in the border, you've been to one place in the border. It's 2,000 miles long, and there's a lot of diversity of what's actually happening. Title 42 ending, we still have literally thousands of people a day that are crossing the border. Now, while the Biden administration is saying, well, we've changed policies and the numbers have gone down, the numbers have gone down because cartels are actually choking down the numbers at this point in the response to it. But the people that are coming across are being treated the same way. They're coming in, being processed, and being released into the country, regardless of where they're from and what their background is. Cartels tell them, just say, I have fear in my country. They'll be released, and they'll wait for the next 4 or 5 years an asylum hearing at some point in the future. And then they'll probably not show up for that hearing at all. So nothing's changed on that. For the individuals crossing the border, nothing's changed. What has changed, and is a very significant thing, the Border Patrol told me, is that we have more people that are non-Spanish speakers that are coming across now. People from Mauritania, people from Russia, people from China, from Pakistan, from the Middle East. Mostly men in their 20s that they're showing up that we have no ID on or no way to be able to really know if that's the name that they're giving us is an accurate name. They're being 10 printed with fingerprints. If they don't show up on our terror watch list, they're just being released into the country. Now, again, our terror watch list is not perfect, but we've had a record number of people on our terror watch list that have been picked up so far this year, over 100 that have been picked up on our southern border. But we've got the people literally traveling with those folks that were on the terror watch list. The one that was on the terror watch list gets picked up and gets deported. The rest of them just get ushered right into the country.
We were told family units,
right,
they would be allowed in. Maybe that single adults would not be allowed in, but that's
not true.
Everybody's getting in.
Everybody's getting in. Yeah, single adults, they're all getting in. And what they're being told is you need to show up in an asylum hearing. They're given a date, 3 to 5. If they're coming to New York City, maybe 8 years in the future, just depending on how backlogged the courts are. 8 years in the future. And they'll come in for that hearing if they show up at all. No one believes they're really going to show up for the hearing at all.
What is the percentage that do?
Well, right now we don't know because it's so far in the future. We don't have a good guess of how many people that's going to be at this point.
Because of the backlog, right?
Because of the backlog. But we know historically we're somewhere between 10 to 15% actually show up for all the hearings.
And so the others, we
disappear.
don't know where. Yeah, we don't
disappear.
And we have no accurate count. Do we know how many people are in the U.S. illegally?
No, we have no way to really count that accurately. And I know there was a push during the census. President Trump had actually pushed to try to find out who's legal, who's not legal in that, and that was fought in the courts on it.
Right, he lost that.
He lost that.
Couldn't ask the question.
Right, and so the question's a pretty simple question. Are you legally present in the country or not? That matters for your schools. That matters for all your social services. That's a legitimate question to be able to help track that.
But the fear was that it would scare them, and they wouldn't even answer it, or they wouldn't fill the census out at all.
Correct. And so the issue still is we don't have a good number of how many people are here legally, but we do know from the Border Patrol telling me just 2 weeks ago, they're getting more and more concerned on national security because we have more and more people coming that we have no idea where they're from. They're not coming from the typical areas. They're coming from multiple different flights to be able to come in, to be able to get here, and they're just released in the country. Again, Middle Eastern men, Mauritanians, Russians, people that historically are not all about our country.
We were also told the new policy for the Biden administration would be if you went through Mexico and you did not apply for asylum in Mexico, you're not from there, you went through that country, didn't apply there, you wouldn't be allowed to apply here. Is that true?
That is what they're telling everyone. When I went down to the border to be able to see if that's what they're actually doing, they're saying, yes, that's what they're actually doing. But what they leave out is the moment they're going to usher you out of the country is not at the border. It's 4 years from now when you get to your hearing.
Oh.
So they're saying to people, hey, if you don't qualify, if you didn't apply for it in another country, then you're going to have to leave 4 years from now.
So they're still allowed in.
They're still allowed in. So that's what I'm saying. Nothing has changed at our border. People are still being waved in as they always have. Now compare that to Canada. In Canada, if you cross into Canada, you're not legally present, and you say, I want to get asylum, they would say, did you cross through from America? And if you said yes, they would turn you right back around into the United States. So you should have applied there before you ever came here. The Biden administration says they're doing that policy, but they're releasing people into the country and not actually doing that.
There are a lot of people who talk about comprehensive immigration reform, that we need to do a big, big thing to change the laws entirely. Then, though, there's always a provision about the possibility of allowing some who've entered illegally to become citizens, and then the conversation sort of stops.
Breaks down.
How can we find some sort of a compromise to all that.
We 100% need to work on legislation to deal with first asylum. How do you define asylum? Can you come from Mauritania, for instance, travel through 10 different countries, and then come here and say, I want to declare asylum?
Right.
Or do you need to ask for asylum in those other countries you transited to before you get here? We've got to be able to fix the asylum policy. We also have this very low screening threshold that if you literally say, I have fear, you're allowed to be able to come to the country. That's not true for any other nation. So we do have to fix the screening. We need to fix the standard on that. We need to fix, if you're transiting through other countries, that you don't qualify for asylum to be able to come here. But we also have got to be able to resolve the basics of our legal immigration process. So if someone wants to legally come to this country, they're allowed to go through a legal process to be able to do that. So we're encouraging legal immigration, discouraging illegal. The Biden administration is doing the opposite. They're literally discouraging legal immigration and encouraging illegal immigration.
How can we know someone's lying when they say they have fear of persecution where they live?
According to the law, the burden of proof is on them.
Okay.
They've got to be able to actually show that burden of proof that here's why. Again, you can't just say, I'm afraid in my country. If you live on the south side of Chicago, you may say, hey, I have fear in my neighborhood, but you could move to lots of other places in America and not have to flee to Canada to fight off what you may be dealing with in that one particular area. So you should ask the same question. If someone has a challenge in the city they're living in, why can't they relocate in their same country? So there is supposedly a high standard for asylum that there's nowhere they could go in their country and still be safe. And they're supposed to go to the next safe country, not travel through 8 different countries to get to the one they want.
Let's switch gears. We just got through the latest crisis in Washington. We've had a lot of government shutdown crises.
Right.
This one was about the debt ceiling. We had this supposed date this week of a default if we didn't act. Congress did pass the compromise between the House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, and President Biden. Right. It was approved by Congress. You were one of the senators who voted no against it, but it passed. Why were you a no?
Well, let me start with, it's only a crisis when Republicans are in the conversation. I don't remember during the Trump administration the media talking about it being a big national crisis on the debt ceiling when Nancy Pelosi and at that time Leader Schumer were saying that the debt ceiling was leveraged to get Trump to actually increase spending. It's only a crisis when Republicans are trying to decrease spending. Now suddenly it's a big crisis. I voted against it because I didn't feel like it actually decreased spending. We have to take seriously what we're actually doing in debt and deficit in this nation. The particular deal does slow down the spending, but doesn't decrease spending in any single year. If you go back to 2011, when there was a Republican House, Democrat Senate, Democrat president, exactly the same as it was now, that debt deal that was done in 2011 actually reduced spending the next 2 years. Spending went down in real dollars. This one, spending goes up in real dollars for the next 2 years. It just goes up slower than what they were anticipating. That's not going to really fix our debt issues.
Now, the House Speaker says, look, I did the best I could.
Sure.
I reined in reckless spending is what he says from the Biden administration. So you can't get everything you want, as President Biden even says. Did at least Speaker McCarthy get something?
He did get some things. As far as slowing down the increase, you're decreasing the increase of spending. Yes, he definitely got that. What we need is a bigger issue, though, in the days ahead. We're dealing with $31.5 trillion in total debt as a nation. Decreasing the increase is not going to solve the problem. This is why I talk a lot about it. We've got to have adult conversations about what we're spending, what we're doing, and prioritize the things we should be spending on. National security, infrastructure, our roads, they're key things government should be doing. Do those things well, and other things we've got to sunset and to say we can't afford to do that right now. When I bring up this federal fumble book that I do every year, I highlighted 50 different examples and said, someone explain to me why this is a government priority of doing a butterfly study in Germany where we hired a Swedish scientist to study butterflies in Germany. Why is the United States...
That's actual federal dollars.
Actual federal dollars from tax dollars that were done to do that. Why are we doing that? We did a colonial sound study in Mexico where we're studying the effects of cannon shots and everything else in colonial Mexico that we paid for. We paid to study the secret language of butchers in Paris. That apparently they've had a secret butcher language since the 13th century. So, okay.
Why are we funding
Correct. If a French university wants to be able to study the secret language of butchers, I'm all in. That's fine for them to do that. Why are we funding that?
How does that get in the budget?
Well, a couple of ways. One is it slips into giant omnibus spending bills that literally no one has read, that someone will have something that they want to do, and they'll just stick it in there either as an earmark or some additional grant that they put in there. And the other way is they'll give to different agencies, basically walking around money, to say to some agency person in a State Department, hey, if you want to be nice and you're developing relationships, here's some money that you can do to be able to pay for.
Okay.
And I look at this and go, okay, there's lots of ways the United States can, quote unquote, be nice in areas around the world. Let's help in feeding people that we know are going to become refugees and flee out of those areas and cause turmoil in areas. That's something strategically that we can do that not only helps the United States, but helps that local area as well. Not studying the secret language of butchers in Paris.
What would you do to rein that in, to stop that from happening?
So a couple things need to be done. We've got to do appropriation bills one at a time. You can't do omnibus bills. No one has read it. No one's reviewed it. There's no oversight.
1,000 pages
Correct.
or more, right?
Thousands.
And you get a day or
pages.
two to vote on it.
Usually less than a day when those come up. And it's something that was written in the leader's office and they bring out and no one's gone through it. Last year was worst case scenario. There wasn't even committee hearings on a single bill last year.
Who writes this stuff?
So it's a mixture of committee staff, of individuals that are what we affectionately call downtown. Those are lobbyists and different groups. It may be someone from the administration that's saying, hey, we really want to spend money in this place. We're not going to be able to get this through an open hearing, so let's just put it into an omnibus bill. And they all get thrown together with no oversight. You find out weeks later what was actually in it.
3 more Republicans are entering the presidential race this week. Former Vice President Pence. You have Chris Christie, who also ran in 2016, the former governor of New Jersey, and Doug Burgum, who's the governor of North Dakota. I don't know if a lot of people know Governor Burgum, but he's going to enter the race this week. So it's a growing field. Former President Trump is still the front runner. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is second in the polls. Do you have anyone that you support so far?
I don't yet. I stayed out of the 2016 race as well and didn't endorse anyone during that time period. I'll stay out of this one in all likelihood as well. But we've got a lot of voices that are out there. What's nice is Republicans, we have a very deep bench. We have a lot of people with good ideas and people that know how to be able to execute this. And it's been interesting for me, just in my own state, as I travel around a very conservative state of Oklahoma, about half the Republicans I talk to want President Trump to come back, and about half of them say, I'd like those policies, but I don't want that person again. I'm looking for somebody else. And so we're seeing a lot of folks running as the somebody else in this process, and the field will narrow down in the months ahead.
There are some who are also the never-Trumpers who, no matter what, they won't support him.
Right.
And then you have those in the Republican Party who love him and will support him to the end. So for you, when you're making up your mind, at some point, if the former president is nominated, are you ready to back him?
Right now, I'm staying out of this race entirely on it, but I'm at a point of saying, listen, we've got to have some serious conversation about the issues that we're facing as a nation right now. And this requires somebody really with some background in policy, someone with some insight that's going to bring solutions and answers to how to be able to solve this. This is not going to be a situation that we're facing right now that's going to be solved by rhetoric. We've got to have somebody with some knowledge and some insight and can actually bring some ideas to the page, because the people I talk to more and more are moving from being angry about where the nation is to afraid of where the nation is. Immigration's out of control, budget's out of control, so many different areas. There are people that are saying, I don't know how this gets fixed in foreign policy and the chaos that the Biden administration's created worldwide. So somebody has to bring a set of ideas. And so for me, I'm always looking for a person who can actually bring ideas, who can solve the problems, and as a benefit, is a role model for our kids in the past. I'm a kid of the Reagan era. I loved ideas and role models. They go well together.
Do you think that the party will unite behind whoever it is?
I do. I do think the party will unite because we see the threat of Joe Biden, quite frankly. We've seen firsthand what has happened in the nation with our economy, with our world standing. We know the threats that we're facing. So we've got to bring somebody that can bring a different set of ideas to what we're actually dealing with right now.
Republican Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma. Great to talk to you. Thank you very much for being here.
It's great to visit with you.